So, picture this. It's May of 2022. You finished watching the first 2 seasons of Atlanta, and most likely, you got hooked on the great comedy, complex and entertaining cast, hard-hitting satire and political messages, and of course the riveting plot of a rapper, his manager cousin, and his bizarre pothead best friend trying to make it in the music industry. And 3.5 years after watching the shocking season 2 finale, which ended with Paperboy, Earn, and Darius flying overseas for a tour with his fellow artist Clark County, whose manager just got jammed up on a gun charge at the airport because Earn hid a pistol in Clark County's bag, you probably can't wait to see how season 3 will finally address this situation and answer all of your questions of what's going to happen in Europe between these 2 parties. But instead of any of what you expected, you get 3 slaps. Yup, you waited 3.5 years to see where the story of Atlanta would pick up, only for the entire season opener to be a random one-off horror story about a black kid getting adopted by a psychotic white lesbian couple just to find out the whole thing was Earn's dream. That's crazy. You must have felt like a real dumbass, huh? Yeah, couldn't be me. Oh wait, that was me.
I'm a dumbass.
Me and millions of other Atlanta fans had the same very not fun experience of watching the season 3 opener to the show. The amount of times I uttered the classic phrase, "What the f is going on?" while watching this episode for the first time was alarming to say the least. Based on the way that season 2 threw the audience for a loop with its short opening vignette about a random couple of kids robbing a chicken joint, having season 3 of Atlanta open up with another seemingly random vignette of a white man and a black man rafting out on the river, and then transitioning into a story about another random black kid fighting for his life against his adopted white mothers, was not beyond the pale. The issue, or at least the shocking aspect of it, is how the main cast was completely shunned and pushed to the side for the sake of these seemingly random stories and characters. Season 3 of Atlanta is one of the most fascinating seasons of television that I've ever watched. It's almost indescribable what the experience of sitting through all 10 episodes of this season is like. Unfortunately, it is my literal job on this channel to describe that experience, so let me rephrase that. Season 3 of Atlanta is easily the most polarizing season of the show, according to the fans. Many hate it, many love it. Many want to love it, but just can't. Many thought they would hate it, but ended up thinking it was actually pretty solid. Reactions are all over the spectrum. Donald Glover himself has even come out in a recent interview and said that season 3 is his favorite of the series.
It's not like the show Atlanta that people wanted, but it's the point of view of Atlanta. And I stand by, I was like, man, I think that might be, even after season 4, which people are like, this is like a perfect, but I'm like, season 3 is, I still think, my favorite.
I'm going to get more into the polarizing aspects of the show later in the video, but for now, let me just set up the structure of the season. Basically, the episodes of season 3 can be split up into 2 categories. There's the main arc and the strange arc. I like saying that because it kind of rhymes. The main arc episodes are all of the episodes that feature the main cast, going about their very strange adventures in the very strange country of Europe. These are episodes 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 10. The strange arc episodes are all of the episodes that show some sort of alternate universe and/or alternate main characters, and they serve as a way for the writers to deeply explore elements of race and society that they otherwise could not do, or at least not as in-depth as they could within the main arc. These are episodes 1, 4, 7, and 9. But before we get into that, I just realized that I haven't really explained what the theme of season 3 is yet. In my previous Atlanta videos, I explained how the overarching theme of season 1 was the struggle, and what it's like to live in the struggle, and how hard it is to escape the struggle. Season 2, fittingly called the robbing season, was about how to maintain success and how not to fall back into the struggle, which usually requires you to do some immoral things that end up making other people suffer. But season 3 is different. Season 3 isn't about the struggle. It's pretty clear from even the first time that we see them that Earn, Al, and Darius have pretty much made it by now. They're rich and successful, now only concerned with trying to build an empire out of that success and wealth. Season 3 as a whole is much less about the characters we've come to know and love, and more about something greater.
Racism.
Oh, he said it right there.
While race has always been a large component of the show's comedy and storytelling, season 3 of Atlanta doesn't just use race as a foundation or a springboard to launch its characters and stories. No. Instead of just being the springboard, race basically is the main character of season 3. Specifically, Season 3 focuses very heavily on the idea of whiteness. From the very beginning, the opening scene is basically a whole long tirade about what it really means to be white, at least in the eyes of the writers.
White's not a real thing, right? There's no scientific basis for it. People just become white. It's social.
What is whiteness? What are white people in relation to black people and other races? Is it even something that can be clearly defined? These questions and more are asked throughout the 10-episode season. What Donald Glover and the rest of the writing staff wanted to depict with Season 3 of Atlanta is what the process of overthrowing the white power structure would actually look like. All throughout the season, you see black people exploiting white fragility, white guilt, white arrogance, and many other white things to move up in the world or displace white people from their positions of power. Season 3 of Atlanta is basically the artistic embodiment of reparations for black people. It's long been said that the greatest threat to white excellence and white people's greatest collective fear is chickens come home to roost in regards to black people deciding to revolt and start to attack white people for what they've done to them over the last 400 years. That idea, but in a modern context, is what this season is all about. But with all that yapping-ass preamble finally out of the way, let's just get to the infamous first episode of Season 3, 3 Slaps. 3 Slaps is the first episode of the Strange arc, and it starts with an eerie scene of a black man and a white man out in the middle of the night on a raft somewhere in the middle of Atlanta. The black man begins to explain that he almost drowned in this water when he was a kid, and he felt like something was trying to pull him down. The white man explains that there probably was something trying to pull him down because an entire black town is buried in this lake, and the town is haunted. Ooh, spooky. The white man goes on to explain that the town was almost white. When the black man challenges that idea, the white man says that being white isn't really scientifically proven. Being white is about where you are and when you are. Basically, being white is social, not skin deep. This is something I understand, but kinda disagree with. One of my favorite anecdotes about the legendary actor and public bitch slapper Will Smith is that Will Smith is so famous that when he goes to certain countries, the people there don't even consider him black. They consider him, well, Will Smith. In the eyes of certain people, through wealth, fame, and likability, Will Smith has actually transcended the idea of race, which is both insane and also unbelievably impressive. But while I agree with this creepy white man that whiteness can be attained, even by people who are not white, I don't believe it's a universal thing. There are people in this world who are racist and also do not know who Will Smith is. If Will Smith were to appear in front of these people, they would treat him the same way they would treat any other black person. Whiteness is social, but due to thousands of years of conditioning, there is still a skin color element to it that can't be ignored. But anyway, the creepy white man goes on to say that whiteness blinds the people afflicted with it. Being white can make you believe you're safer than those of other races. It can make you think that you're better or different, and all that type of mentality creates is an isolation and a separation from reality. As he says,
It's easy to see the black man as cursed because you've separated yourself from him, but you don't know. You're enslaved just like him. Cold whiteness.
We then see the white man turn to face the black man and, oh shit, he's pale as fuck and he has no eyes. He's essentially blind from the pain of his fellow man. Side note, I really love just how creepy and eerie this scene is. Like how the lights subtly get dimmer and dimmer as the white man gives his speech about the cursed white race. It's so intimate and horrifying at the same time. Season 3 in general has a very creepy, Halloweenish vibe to it that really feels like an extension of the great Teddy Perkins episode from Season 2. This all turns out to be the dream of a little black boy in class named Laquarius. Laquarius wakes up to the news that his class is going on a field trip to see the new Black Panther 2 movie, which gets its name dropped a lot in this season. And out of excitement, he does what any young black kid who gets to see Black Panther 2 would do, and he hops up on his desk and starts hitting that shit until he gets sent to the principal's office. His mother is called to the office, and she's obviously not very happy with her son, but she's also very curt and stern with the teachers. After they leave the office, she records him while making him dance the same way he did in class.
Nay, nay. Come on. Hey, hey, hey. Hit it. Hit it.
And this whole scenario was again based off a real-life viral video of a mother making her son dance for getting in trouble.
Fortnite, huh?
And it's after this that we see where the episode gets its title from. And after seeing this violent and horrific display of child abuse, Aquarius's teachers call Child Protective Services on the mother, and like any good and loving mother would do, she gladly hands her son over to CPS without any fight at all. Huh. I have to say, there aren't many side characters in the show that I don't like, but this mother is the f***ing worst. I get tough love, but this is just straight up neglect. Anyway, Aquarius ends up getting adopted by two white lesbian women who seem to have a thing for adopting black children. Aquarius has a hard time acclimating to his new home because, who the f*** could acclimate to living like this? Things seem bad enough at the start, but eventually the couple's true intentions come to light, and Aquarius discovers that these white lesbians aren't just gay. They're also crazy, murderous psychopaths. The mothers make a plan to kill the kids and themselves in a horrific car crash, but Aquarius gets the jump on them and rescues his adopted brothers and sisters as well. Side note, it's been a while since I've seen a death this satisfying in the show. Aquarius eventually, somehow, finds his way back home to his real mother and family and is welcomed back with open arms. And while he happily eats his spaghetti and watches cartoons, he suddenly stops and looks back at the camera with a worried expression. And then we see that this was all just Ern's dream, and we finally get back to the real show. Watching this for the first time back in 2022, I had no clue what the f was going on. It wasn't until after the episode aired that I found some background information about the inspiration for this episode. Apparently, Aquarius's whole story was based on a real-life event of a very similar white lesbian couple adopting a bunch of black children, dressing them up and making them perform in the streets for money, and then all of them dying in a car wreck suicide. The story served as a real-life example of white hubris at work, and another example of black people being used and abused by white people until ultimately succumbing to that abuse. But in Season 3 of Atlanta, in the strange arc, we get a new ending. An ending where the black kids win in the end. They survive and their white oppressors die. I keep talking about my feelings of when I first watched these episodes because I think it's important to differentiate between how I originally felt about it with no context of the rest of the season and how I feel about it years later after watching the entire season multiple times. At first, I was not a big fan of this episode. But now, after realizing how perfectly it sets up and establishes the tone and the overarching messages that the rest of the episodes to come will have, oh yeah, this episode is amazing. It's a perfect season opener. Still, I wish it had more Ern, Al, and Darius though. Episode 2 is called Sinterklaas is Coming to Town, and it's the glorious return to the main story arc, but something isn't quite right. I feel like the last time we saw the Atlanta crew, something really important happened. Oh yeah, what the hell happened with that whole Clark County and the gun in his manager's bag fiasco? What's that? You said that they did an anime time skip over the whole situation and they never mentioned that shit ever again? That can't be right. I mean, that sounds like something fans would really be disappointed to hear. You say Donald Glover made This Is America and he can do whatever the f he wants? All right, I'll go with it. Yeah, remember how I said multiple times in my other videos that one of my biggest issues with the show is that certain decisions characters make don't really have the repercussions that they should, or that the show doesn't really dwell on these things long enough. This is probably the biggest offender of them all. I mean, did the writers really not realize how hyped people would be to watch Season 3, specifically to find out just what happens with the Clark County situation? There's no way they didn't, right? I mean, what a colossal you to your fan base to just act like that shit never happened and never mattered. This episode is arguably my least favorite of Atlanta just for that reason. The episode itself, removed from the whole Clark County situation, is a pretty meandering episode that really just serves to show how successful the boys have become nowadays. Ern has finally mastered his craft as a manager, and you can visibly see the difference in his confidence and calm demeanor compared to that of Season 1 and Season 2. Paperboy is now internationally famous to the point where now when he gets locked up, there's a crowd of supporters outside the jail waiting for him to be free. And oh look, Darius is here too.
I've been roaming the streets, since twilight.
Darius.
This city is my Jesus.
And also Van is here too. Wait, doesn't she have a daughter that she should be taking care of? Oh well, I'm sure she's fine and this random trip to Europe means nothing at all. I don't have much to analyze in this episode aside from Earn and Al screwing over the venue Al was supposed to perform at due to what they perceived as racism from the town. This is another example of black people shaking up the power dynamic with white people by using wealth and power black people don't usually have.
I will destroy you. Okay.
Is it the morally right thing to do to not honor your contract and do the show? Not really, but hey, white people have been getting over on black people for centuries, so it's totally cool. Right? Also, RIP to the god Tupac. Episode 3 is called The Old Man in the Tree, and it's about a few different things. Earn, Al, Van, and Darius go to a local UK party being thrown by a very affluent billionaire. Once at the party, they all get into their own things, and they all end up having drastic consequences for others, but not for them. Darius has a casual conversation with an Asian woman, which leads to her being accused of being an irredeemable racist by the rest of the party.
Your fiance?
No, but the wedding is off. Like, her mum can rot in North Korea for all I care.
Oh.
Racialism drives me fucking mad.
Paperboy plays high-stakes poker with a few very rich white men, but when Paperboy doesn't get his winnings, he proceeds to destroy the owner of the home's beloved tree.
My fucking money, man, dog!
Earn talks to a well-connected music exec who is desperate to get Earn's opinion on a young black artist that he's thinking of financially sponsoring, only for the artist to turn out to be a talentless scammer who's just trying to exploit the music exec's overzealous ignorance to get rich and famous. Oh yeah, and Van is just pushing people into pools and some other random shit. You know, maybe something is going on with Van. Oh well, let's ignore it for now. Darius' situation is meant to be a depiction of the potentially cancerous aspects of cancel culture, which really started to become very widespread during Atlanta's run. I'm someone who firmly believes that certain people should be canceled for their actions and beliefs, but there is a certain feeling nowadays that even something as harmless as a simple joke or observation can be thrown back in your face by a horde of ravenous haters who just want to see people be severely punished for minor offenses. Darius has his "this is the message" moment when he has a conversation with seemingly the only other sane person at the party about racism being unbreakably intertwined with capitalism.
I thought racism wasn't really a thing here like that. I thought it was more about class. Something only has value if something else has less value.
Any way you can buy a can of Coke, some type of racism got down there.
Our situation is a depiction of what can happen when black people finally get that proverbial seat at the table that you might have heard about before. Rich and powerful white people might act like rich and powerful black people are accepted and that the rules with them are the same as it is for their white counterparts. But that's only as long as that black person in question isn't winning more than them. I believe what Atlanta is trying to say with Al's poker game is that everything can be going a black person's way, but at any time, someone within the high levels of a white power structure can allow white people to just say, okay, that's enough, and simply stop playing the game. It doesn't hurt them, they lose nothing, and they just start over with another game. But the black man or woman who was winning, that game was all they had, and they can't start over and just start a new one. So Paperboy destroying Fernando's tree is completely justified, I think. And then there's Earn's situation. Earn's music exec friend is very rich and also very naive, which is a bad combination. The young black artist who is exploiting the man's stupidity tells Earn that he needs to back him because it will be a win for black people overall. Earn struggles with this because deep down he knows that this is really just exploiting a poor, stupid man out of his money. But after Earn hears Paperboy say this, he has a change of heart.
That don't mean I gotta help him, right? I mean, yeah, he's black, but he's still scamming.
Man, so white kids be scamming all the fucking time. Shit, black kids need to scam them on.
Okay, I've kind of hinted at this a couple of times already, but clearly there is a big moral dilemma with a lot of what this season is depicting. Exploiting people is wrong, regardless of what skin color they are. But similar to the robbing theme of season 2, I can understand that eat or be eaten mindset it would take to go through with that exploitation. To a certain extent, exploitation is about survival and doing what you might need to do to get what you need to get. But there comes a point where someone's motivation for survival turns to greed. And this episode was a clear example of greed, not survival, which I can't really co-sign or support.
I can't co-sign that, big brother, but I ain't mad at you for what you do. I ain't mad at you for nothing you do.
I don't know if I would call Ern a bad person for going along with the artist's plan to use the white exec for his money, but it definitely isn't something that a good person would do. I don't know. Tell me in the comments, do you think Ern is a good person or not? This episode takes place in a world where reparations for slavery have actually been enacted by the government, and it's called the Big Payback. Reparations are something that a certain sect of black people have been pushing for centuries. Basically, it's the belief that the detrimental effects of slavery were so severe on multiple generations of black American families that black people are owed monetary restitution for their suffering. A lot of shows outside of Atlanta have used this topic as subject matter for their scripts. One of the most iconic is the Chappelle Show sketch from the early 2000s.
So how did you become the world's wealthiest man, Tron?
Hot hand in a dice game, baby girl. 6 hours straight talking about clackety, clack.
Basically, the episode follows an average white man with a young daughter, a nice office job, and an ex-wife who's slowly warming back up to him. His life is going pretty well. That is, until news of reparations for black people who can prove that their ancestors were owned by American slave masters comes through. Unfortunately for this average everyday white man, he has some of those slave masters in his family tree.
My name is Shaniqua Johnson of the St. Louis Johnsons. Your family owned my great-great-grandmother and father for 12 years. You owe me money.
At first, Doug from The Hangover tries to ignore the woman, but eventually her demands for restitution become so loud and constant that by the end of the episode, he has to give in and loses everything to this woman. Now, you may ask yourself after watching this all go down if it was fair for a white man who several generations removed from his slave master family to have to pay for the sins of his ancestors in such a way. To that, I would say that season 3 of Atlanta is not about what's right and it's not about what's fair. It's about shifting the balance of power. Due to this white man's slave master ancestors being so rich, he was afforded the kind of life that he would be able to attain happiness and carefree living. But on the other side of that coin, there's a solid argument to say that many black people would not have grown in the toxic and dangerous environments that they did if their ancestors weren't owned by slave masters. It's a very complex issue that, unfortunately, I'm not able to give adequate time to in this video, but I really love what this random white man says to the main character about the whole situation before he, checks out of this job called life.
We were treating slavery as if it were a mystery buried in the past, something to investigate if we chose to. Confession is not absolution. To them, slavery is not past, and it's not a mystery. It is a cruel, unavoidable ghost that haunts in a way we can't see.
Episode 5 is called Cancer Attack, and it's one of my favorite episodes of the entire show. And that's not just because it's a very funny episode that also has an amazing, intimate moment where we get a rare look into Al's deeper thoughts and feelings, but I love this episode because it legitimately saved the season for me. Back when I first watched season 3, after the first 4 episodes left me feeling unimpressed or just straight up confused and annoyed, episode 5 was the first episode that really made me feel like I was watching the show that I loved again. If it wasn't for this episode, who knows if I would have stuck it out and kept watching the show. But the plot of this episode is that Paperboy has a show in, I don't know, somewhere in the UK where people have really funny accents.
I don't have his number.
You don't have your nephew's phone number?
No.
And while he's performing, someone sneaks backstage and steals his phone. Now, this would be a problem just for the act of theft alone, but the real problem is that the phone in question was a very important phone to Al for some reason, and he needs it back. The boys go through all the most likely suspects, including a terminally ill child Paperboy did a meet and greet with before the concert.
Get the bed from my son!
Sorry. Thought he had a phone.
But they come up with nothing. That is, until they remember one crazy fan who jumped on stage before Paperboy went on and started screaming at the crowd. It turns out that this crazed fan is the nephew of the venue owner. So they manage to track Wiley, the name of the kid, down, and they spend the rest of the episode trying to interrogate him about the whereabouts of Al's phone. Wiley plays the fool and toys with them for the whole interrogation process, but he keeps dropping these subtle hints to his deeper appreciation for Paperboy.
It's 404.
And that's my fucking number, nigga. You got my fucking phone. Give me my fucking phone, nigga.
This all culminates with Al and Wiley having a man-to-man and heart-to-heart about why Al needs the phone back so badly.
I haven't written anything in about 7 months. 7 months, man. It's like I don't know what's bad or good anymore. You know, I was never really into rapping either. Not really. Yeah, I don't know, like, that's what I do. But tonight, man, tonight I was out there on the dock before the show, and I finally heard it. I finally heard him. My voice, I heard him, man, loud and clear, like, and I recorded that on the phone. If I don't get it back now, then I'm afraid I'm gonna lose it forever. So.
Wiley's response to Paperboy's story is to share one of his own, one that illuminates the reason that he wanted to meet Paperboy. And then he even sings him this nice little song.
I like music, but I wasn't really that into making it. I was a lot like you. Then a girl broke my heart in 8th grade. Her name was Rosie. But when I heard the Postal mixtape, I felt the same. I wrote this. The mountainside, I can see the smoke horizon. The ocean blues, they already do. They say the tide is turning. I swear I saw the other side. I never wanted less, because I don't need more. I don't want more. You were my mirror, my best friend. We used to be one and the same. But now my hero's gone and left me here to play this evil game. I swear I saw the other side. I never needed less, because I don't need more. I don't want more of you.
It's the second half of Wiley's song that really sticks out the most to me. The lyrics, "You were my mirror, my best friend. We used to be one and the same. But now my hero's gone and left me here to play this evil game. I swear I saw the other side. I never wanted less, because I don't need more. I don't need more of you." Now, this scene is weird, like weird even for Atlanta standards. But I gotta say that it just might be my favorite scene in the entire show. And even now, years later, I still can't really say why. What's more important than deciphering what a piece of art was trying to say is deciphering how it made you feel. But if I had to try to decipher what the scene in Wiley and Paperboy's dynamic is about, I would say that this is an example of what can happen when an artist reaches a certain level of fame and success. Wiley and Paperboy are two very different people from a surface level view. But somehow, despite their differences in culture, nationality, ethnicity, lifestyle, and so many other things, they still have so many damn near impossible things in common. A shared birthday, a shared name of a lost love. Both have been to prison, both like music but don't particularly like making it. For all intents and purposes, Wiley is Paperboy. And in his song, he sings about how he used to see Paperboy as a mirror to himself, but now that Paperboy has blown up and gotten all rich and successful, or playing evil games as Wiley puts it, he doesn't feel that same connection with Paperboy or his music. He doesn't need or want any more of Paperboy because he already has the old shit that he loved. That's my best go at it. I don't know if anyone else down in the comments has their own theories about what the writers were trying to say with Wiley in this whole episode. I would love to read them. The episode ultimately ends with everyone boarding the bus to go to the next city, but it turns out that Socks is the one who stole the phone. Oh shit, that's right. I never introduced Socks, did I?
My name's Socks, by the way.
Coming back in here for being all racist. Keep playing with Team Paperboy, yeah? We're plugged in down here, man. Mob shit. So mad I could kill this knee. Oh, I'm so mad, man.
Wow. Your hairline's intense, bro.
Socks is a very strange character, and I'm not exactly sure why he was added into Season 3. Socks is a local who latches on to the gang at the end of Episode 3. He clearly is only hanging around Ern, Al, and Darius for the clout, but for some reason the boys just never noticed this. Socks is only in 2 episodes, Episode 3 and Episode 5, and then he's never seen or mentioned again. I don't hate Socks, mostly because there wasn't enough screen time for me to hate him, but he is obviously a huge scumbag. He did have some hilarious moments though. Episode 6 is called Black Fashion, and it's all about
Reinvest in your hood. Reinvest in your hood.
Well, it's kinda about that, but mostly it's about the very shady industry of social justice. I remember it was sometime between the Trayvon Martin case and the 2016 Trump election that a crop of social justice activists, I hope you can hear the air quotes there, came into the spotlight. Now, a lot of these people were very genuine and passionate crusaders for social justice and only wanted to do what they could to improve the world. But also a lot of them were just a bunch of pandering grifters who saw an opportunity to build their brand off the backs of other people's suffering.
Yeah, I could fuck with some Black Panther tickets too, actually.
Me too.
Black Panther tickets too. Yeah, the second film, maybe it's the second film.
Paperboy's arc in this episode shows a sort of day-to-day in the life of these fake social activists and allows Paperboy to see just how much of a sham social activism in today's world can be. Also, I love that the fashion company that hires Paperboy and all of these black activists to repair their image is based off of the real-life brand that put out an ad with the little black boy wearing a monkey shirt back in the day. I mentioned in my season 2 video that Atlanta would start taking from real life stories more often, and season 3 is chock full of them so far. But this all culminates in Paperboy thinking that his Reinvest in Your Hood campaign is going to be a legit game changer that truly improves the lives of black people in America. But when the ad campaign is finally released, he sees that his original idea has been bastardized by the fashion company it was pitched to.
Your hood.
We invest in our hoods.
Yes, that's it. Talking big money, nigga.
Well, it's been bastardized over the years.
By who?
Bastards, Oral. Fatherless bastards.
As one of the social justice activists tells Paperboy in the end,
why would a company make a project that would teach black people to stop buying their products and reinvest in their own? Why would they fund their own demise? That's why you need your own nonprofit. That's how I managed to squeeze $100K out of them for my own charity.
It turns out that you can't exploit the powers that be for everything that you want or everything that they have, but you can still get them for enough to make a difference. And I think that's a good lesson. The revolution isn't going to come all at once. It's going to be small, subtle changes that eventually lead to a greater outcome. The B-plot of this episode is about Darius exploring his Nigerian roots while in the UK and taking some strange, rich white woman out to eat to a traditional Nigerian restaurant. And if you didn't think that you could hate a character who has less than 5 minutes of screen time, then you're going to have to rethink that after seeing this bitch. While in the Nigerian restaurant, the rich white woman in question is instantly captivated by what she sees in the food that she tastes, so she questions Darius about Nigerian culture. She also mentions that her husband is in the restaurant industry and is looking for a new direction to go in regarding food and atmosphere. Darius shrugs all of this off as unwanted small talk, but when he returns to the restaurant sometime later, he finds that the restaurant is gone, completely closed down. Across the street, though, is a small little food truck called Nujabes, and inside the truck is the rich white woman that Darius had taken to the shop days earlier. Darius asks what happened to the Nigerian restaurant, and she responds that she bought it from the owner of the property, not even the owner of the restaurant, and then started a gentrified Nigerian food truck business right outside of the building. Fun fact, I showed my Nigerian girlfriend this scene of the woman giving Darius some cheesy jollof, and she audibly gasped with her hand over her mouth. As I've mentioned and illustrated many times over the course of this video, a major theme of this season is about black people getting over on white people, so I find it interesting that they added this small story of the opposite happening in this episode. Maybe it was to show the reasons that black people feel justified in screwing over other white people, but I don't know for sure. Episode 7 is called Trinity to the Bone, and it's another episode in the Strange arc. I don't have much to say about this episode. I think the concept of an affluent white family's son becoming more attached to his Trinidadian caretaker than his white parents is both hilarious and another great example of how black people could potentially start to shift the balance of power by influencing the white youth to grow up with loving black role models in their home. It also keeps the horror-ish elements that are prevalent throughout the season with the recurring return to sender scenes. And last but not least, they got the motherfucking white boy goat Chet Hayes to basically just play himself.
It's your boy Chetana, coming straight from the Golden Globes, you want to say? Big up the youth them way out of Kingston. Me wake up this morning and me see the thing turn up. Internet gone mad. Hey yo, listen! Me drop one big tune right now upon SoundCloud.
If you don't know who Chet Hayes or Chet Hanks is, he's Tom Hanks' son who somehow turned into the biggest wigger of all time. He is a real-life example of what this episode is depicting, which, again, is both hilarious and a little scary.
Booyaka, booyaka.
Episode 8 is called Nujabes, which is basically just code for hip-hop as the newest black art form that took the world by storm and created a massive amount of wealth and opportunity for traumatized and emotionally damaged black men and women. I'm just gonna say it now. This is a weird fucking episode. The episode is all about Al and Darius making a planned day to get high on some exclusive European psychedelics, and just like with all psychedelic trips, they hope they have a positive experience. Spoiler alert, Al does not have a positive experience. Most of the episode involves Al wandering through the increasingly bizarre places of the UK, running from teenage hooligans, interrupting strange interpretive art pieces, and eventually meeting this woman named Lorraine. The majority of this episode is Lorraine taking Paperboy on a tour of the UK underground and giving him life/career advice that always seems to have a very patronizing tone. This leads her to taking Paperboy to a club for canceled celebrities. It's here that Al finds who else but Liam motherfucking Neeson's chilling at the bar.
The one with them big ass wolves and Liam Neeson's in it.
Liam Neeson is my.
And it's scenes like this that really make season 3 of Atlanta feel so surreal because at this time, Liam Neeson was basically on the cusp of being canceled due to telling an old story in an interview about how he had learned one of his close female friends was sexually assaulted by a black man. So, in his rage and ignorance, he ran around town with a blunt object, hoping to find that black man, or any black man, to take his anger out on. Liam Neeson had told this story to illustrate how much of a mistake it was and how much he had changed and grown as a person since that time. But, black people didn't really give a fuck about that. Black people were more just horrified that he even bothered to bring a story like that up unprovoked, and so he was temporarily canceled for his racist past.
I thought people knowing who I once was made clear who I am, who I've become.
It's good to know that you don't hate black people now, you know?
What? No. I can't stand a lot of you. Well, now I feel that way. Because you tried to ruin my career.
And honestly, I can see both sides to this. Ultimately, I think white people should be given the freedom to share their racist history and ignorance without fear of repercussion. It's sort of similar to the Nelson Mandela approach of fixing deep racial issues in South Africa. You know, that classic story where he had everyone on both sides of the war sit down and confess their sins to each other and then agree to move on from their past in order to build a better future. Obviously, you can't expect all sins to be forgiven, but it will be very hard to fix this world without some forgiveness. Anyway, I really love Liam Neeson's final line to Paperboy about what being white is really like.
The best and worst part about being white is you don't have to learn anything if you don't want to. Take it easy, Paperboy.
The real story of this episode, though, is about Lorraine. After Lorraine helps Al flee the club before they make him perform, they have an argument in the street about how Al can't trust the people around him, and that they just look at him like a cash cow.
Nigga, all day I've been telling you what you needed to hear, not what the fuck you wanted to hear.
Fuck out of here, man.
No, if you don't have that, guess what? You're fucking white.
This is backed by Darius asking Al to pay for everything earlier in the episode. She also asks if Al even owns his own masters, which are basically the rights to his music. Al doesn't really have an answer for this question, which anyone in the music industry will tell you is not a good sign. But eventually, Al's body succumbs to the drugs that he took earlier, and he ends up paralyzed on the street, just like the person he and Darius walked by earlier in the episode. Al eventually wakes up in his hotel bedroom with Ern by his side. Al asks Ern where Lorraine is, and a very confused and concerned Ern replies back with,
"Your mom?"
Yeah, so that strange woman who was walking Paperboy around and flirting with him and people were asking if they were fucking, yeah, that was his mom, I guess. I don't know, man. The more I think about this episode, the more fucked up it is. Like, this might be the biggest what the fuck were they thinking moment of the entire show. I don't know if Lorraine is supposed to be trans in the show or if she's just a trans actress playing a woman. But either way, I think it just adds to the very weird vibe that this whole episode gives off. Not that there's anything wrong with acting as a trans woman or acting as a regular woman, but it's the context in which she's acting in. I saw a theory somewhere online that said that Al imagining his mother as trans was supposed to symbolize single mothers playing the role of both mother and father, which is honestly as good of an explanation that I think we're gonna get, so I'm just gonna go with that one. But I really do love the moment at the end where Al asks Ern who owns his masters, and Ern just simply says, "You do." And I know this episode is about Al, but it's dope to see Ern not only grow as a manager to the point where he's competent enough to get his client the rights to his own music, but also the fact that he never stopped looking out for Al and he genuinely wants the best for him instead of just using him as a way to make money. He's definitely come a long way since the days of season 1 and even season 2. Episode 9 is called Rich Wigger Poor Wigger, and it's the finale of the Strange arc. This whole episode is kind of like a parody of those old black and white teenage B horror movies of the 50s and 60s. You know, like The Monster from Green Lake or The Super Radioactive Slug or whatever bull-ass titles those movies had. The main character in this story is Aaron, an ethnically ambiguous but mostly white-looking high school senior who is about to graduate. But unfortunately for Aaron, he does not have the money or the scholarships to go to the college that all of his friends are going to. That is, until a very wealthy black benefactor who is an alumni of Aaron's high school offers to pay for every black student's college tuition on a full ride.
I am going to pay every single senior's college tuition who's black.
Whoa, what a lucky break for Aaron. I mean, his dad is black, so he's definitely getting a full ride, right? Well, not so fast, because the catch to this whole proposition is that every kid has to prove their blackness to the wealthy benefactor, along with a panel of other black elites, before they can be approved for their loan. And when it comes to proving your blackness, the panel of judges aren't looking at your DNA makeup to decide. No, it's more about the culture of blackness. It's all explained pretty well by this Middle Eastern kid in a do-rag.
He doesn't believe that ADOS necessitates blackness. He's really talking about the culture of black in America. It's a nuanced discussion. Could you wave check me?
This is a major issue for Aaron because, as you can see by this opening clip, he's not exactly what you would call in touch with his African roots.
Hey, why don't you two niggas go find your dads, okay? Fuck you said to me? You heard me, bitch.
I really miss those old days of Call of Duty when every pregame lobby was just a wild, wild west of slurs and bigotry. Good times. Anyway, Aaron tries to convince the panel of black OGs that his pasty ass really does have some attachment to his black side, but ultimately, he fails.
You are white! You shut the fuck up! You are white! You white!
When Aaron is shunned by this panel of judges and realizes that this means he won't get a full ride to college, he basically snaps and decides that he's going to take things into his own hands. And by take things into his own hands, I mean he's going to burn down the school. So he decides to live out his favorite video game and takes a flamethrower that I guess he just has and goes to the school. But when he gets there, he finds out that there's already another kid at the school for the same reason, only instead of being too white, this kid was denied because he was too African. Black African culture and Black American culture have some crossover, but they are definitely not the same culture. So this Nigerian kid, who was denied by the panel of judges, just like Aaron was, decided to burn down the school, but for whatever reason, the two parties cannot agree to burn down the school together, so instead, they just try to burn each other. This all ends with the Nigerian kid getting shot by the police, but this coincidentally earns the kid a scholarship because that's the blackest thing that can happen to somebody. We then get a hilarious time skip to Aaron as an adult working in a phone store, and he looks noticeably blacker, for lack of a better term. When you put this episode together with the other episodes of the Strange arc, you get 4 stories dissecting the white power structure and the different ways that blackness can potentially overcome and shift the balance of power, whether that be individually like Aaron and Aquarius, or on a wider scale like the Chet Hanks and Legalized Reparations episodes. I wasn't crazy about these episodes when they first aired because they weren't what I wanted to see from the show. I wanted more Paperboy, Earn, Darius, and Vanessa. But now that I've come to terms with these episodes being what we ended up getting, I think I can appreciate them a lot more than I did in the past, and some of these episodes are now some of my favorites of the season. R.I.P. to the god Kevin Samuels. I mean, he was kind of a dickhead, but at his core, I believe he meant well. So, that should conclude season 3, but unfortunately, there is one more episode that I have to talk about. The true finale of season 3 of Atlanta is called Terror, or Terrar, however you say it, and it's really fucking stupid. Okay, here we go again with me having to shit on a van-focused episode while trying to prove that it has nothing to do with her being the only black woman on the show. God, it really is becoming a tradition at this point. The van-focused episode in season 1 called Value was a good episode. It just wasn't as good as most of the other episodes in season 1. I still really like that episode though, and I really like that depiction of Van. I'm not crazy about the season 2 episode Helen that focuses on Van, but I do still really like the way the character is written in that episode, and I sympathized with her struggle of trying to save what at the time was a completely dead relationship with Ern. I also really liked the Van-focused episode Champagne Poppy from season 2 as well. And to that point, I still really liked Van as a character. Season 3 and this finale is basically where my Van arc starts. The entire season, we see Van sort of doing her own thing, but in the background, and we're given all these clips of Ern checking up on her and randomly running into her around Europe. And it's clear that something's off, but we never get the answer from Van as to what that is. And all of that was fine. It added an air of mystery to the overarching plot of what the hell Van is doing in Europe. Well, this finale episode is where we finally get those answers to what the hell Van is doing in Europe. I don't even want to go too much into detail about this episode because I hate it that much, but basically, Van has a psychotic break due to the pressures of being a single mother without an identity or real sense of purpose outside of, well, being a mother. And she flies over to Amsterdam to find herself. She originally thinks that she has to find herself with Ern, but she quickly realizes that she actually has to do it on her own. And that's when she decides that she wants to pretend to be the black version of Amelie. Amelie, I don't know how to say that. Whatever, the chick from this movie. And she proceeds to get into an unknowable amount of strange and morally questionable adventures until she's discovered by one of her friends from Atlanta and eventually is forced to snap out of it and come clean about her issues. The real reason I hate this episode is because it's such a ridiculous way to mask horrible parenting, and Van comes off as a truly selfish and insufferable character.
I've just been feeling really off for a while. I closed my eyes while I was driving, and then I got scared, so I opened my eyes and I was in the opposite lane. When I picked Lottie up from school, I felt like she was looking at me like she knew what happened and that she hated me for it. I brought her to my mom's and I bought a ticket to Europe.
Like, bitch, we all have existential dilemmas and chronic depression. Go raise your fucking daughter. And this is another episode that, at the time it first aired, I was just so over the direction that this season was going in that I couldn't really appreciate it, but unlike many of the other episodes in this season, I still don't really appreciate it, and I've never really come around to it. It just might be my least favorite episode of the entire show for how it ruined a previously great character. It also doesn't really connect to the overall themes of the rest of the season's episodes. Like, the only other connection I can think that it might have is it's that snap back to reality and that black people can't just do whatever they want and escape their problems like white people, but that doesn't really hold weight because abandoning your kids is something that even white people can't get away with. The whole episode just ruins what was a very interesting season of television with what ended up being a resounding nothing burger. Which is kind of sad because on the rewatch of season 3 that I did for this video, I was really starting to come around and have a lot more appreciation for it as a whole. But coming back to this finale and realizing that this was the entire send-off for this story and this season, all those same feelings of contempt and resentment that I originally had for season 3 came back. So I can say that season 3 is better than what I remember it being, but this finale is just as bad as it always was. So that's season 3 of Atlanta, and it may not be the best season of the show like Donald Glover believes, but it is a very fascinating season nonetheless. But to be honest, I think I do understand why Donald Glover loves this season so much. It represents the biggest leap out of the box in the series, and that's definitely saying something for a show as surreal and out of the box as Atlanta. And even though it didn't connect with the fans the way I'm sure he and the writers wished it did still connect with a lot of people, and there were some really great episodes in this season. I think what season 3 represents serves to accentuate another great message though. That message is, don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and try something new. It can be easy and comforting to stay with what you know, but you might be able to find something even greater if you take the risk and extend out to reach it. You also may not achieve whatever your original goal was, but there's something admirable and exciting about trying new things even when you find failure instead of success. No amount of failure should deter you from wanting more and potentially trying to expand your horizons. Season 3 of Atlanta was many things, but a failure was not one of them. I may not have liked it as much as seasons 1 and 2, but season 3 still gave me a lot to appreciate and a lot to think about and reflect on. It's truly the definition of a flawed masterpiece.